Welcome back to my Commodore 64 Memories videos. This is where I look at old Commodore 64 software and some of the technical details behind them. Today we have Beer Rescue, published in 2025. Code by Just Epics, music by Nordish Sound and a Skyrunner, graphics by Just Epics again, and the tape loader was credited to me and Richard. Well, that's very nice. Thank you very much. So I'm looking at this game because it's actually quite a good example of mixed multicolor mode and high resolution graphics. So let's have a little look in C64 Debug GUI. So on the disk version, we're greeted by this rather lovely piece of loading music. Well, it's already loaded, but you know what I mean. And this loading screen. Really fantastic, actually. I think it's really well pixeled. And it has a nice little press space to continue down at the bottom there. Making good use of all three SID registers there for the sound. It's just a standard picture, standard multicolor bitmap picture anyway. There's no sprite overlays or anything like that. There's no bad line trickery going on. Although interestingly, it seems to be switched off in the borders and then enabled just above where the top border comes in. Maybe the bottom and top borders were going to be opened at some point for sprites being displayed in there, but that didn't happen. I'm only guessing at that point. But there doesn't seem to be any other reason why you would want to switch on and off the bitmap display unless you are opening and closing opening borders. Then of course we're greeted by this rather nice little title screen. We seem to have a nice little timed animating raster bar effect behind the logo there. Yes, moving the targeting cursor up and down, we can quite clearly see that the background register D021 is being updated with a nice little graduated and animating raster bar there just to add some colour to the logo, so the background colour is shining through the transparent pixels there in the logo. And of course, later on in the screen, it gets set to black because that's what the background colour wants to be. Nice little game, get ready intro, and there we go. We can see quite clearly that when you pick up the beer bottles, there's a little animating sprite of a flame or like a smoky effect or something like a teleporting out effect. Don't know what that is, but that's what it looks like, right? But we also have, of course, the red bounty boxes showing where the player sprite is and where the animating bee is. Hey, look, I managed to complete the first level without dying. Aha! So that's interesting. Look, we seem to have a couple of expanded sprites adding extra background colors to the text. Okay, so in this debug mode here, the text is not in front of the sprites. So the sprites seem to be the foreground priority register hasn't been detected properly in this version of C64 Debug GUI. That's what's causing a little bit of a problem, I think. So what should happen is that the text should be shining through, and it is shining. Well, the text is on top of the sprites. The sprites are actually shining through beneath, if you like. So the sprites are actually in the background compared to the foreground. There we go. If I toggle that on and off, you can see there. And so we have two sprites right next to each other, expanded, basically adding extra colors for the text background there. So there's the sprites all on their own. So we can quite clearly see where those sprites are, and then adding on the background, you can see where the text should be, but the debug drawing mode in this is obviously not quite correct. So if we change the colours for one of the sprites, there you go, you can see that the purple sprite now is on the right hand side, so that's sprite 6. And then we can quite clearly see that there's meant to be some colour updates going on for the 110 points, right? I think that's what it is, 110 PT, but it's not visible, because the debug drawing in this is not the greatest. There we go, 110 points bonus, I guess, for the number of seconds it took me to complete the level. So you can see that the signboard, if you like, has, with a standard multicolour text screen, this could not be done with high resolution graphics, because you've got two colours there, and one of them isn't the background graphics, right, and the rest of it is multicolour text mode. So that's why the sprites are there in the background to add some nice extra colours for the high resolution graphics. So that's a nice little surprise. I do like finding these little touches. I think it adds a little bit of extra visual definition to the screen, if you like. So if I change the colour for sprite number 7, the last sprite in the list, then you can quite clearly see the left-hand portion of the signboard is changing colour as well. So sprite 7 has less priority than sprite 6. Sprite 6 has more priority, in other words, it gets displayed in front of sprite 7. So there we go, you can quite clearly see that it's definitely two horizontally expanded sprites. Oh, and vertically expanded as well, so X and Y expanded sprites to cover that area of the screen quite completely. So we can quite clearly see that this game is not really heavy on sprites at all. That's why it's very much a retro-themed game. I do like that the colour change as well that happens with the level when you die, so everything goes into kind of like muted grey tones. But anyway, this game is a really good example, I think, of mixed multicolour mode and high-res mode. Whoops, I just accidentally clicked on that one and set it back. But you can see here, if I zoom in, oh dear, I've accidentally painted over those characters as well with multicolour. Whoops, yeah, you see I accidentally, yeah, it's quite easy to do in this debugger, is that if you accidentally click with the wrong mouse button, then you start painting characters when you don't want to. So let's zoom in here. So we can see that the green grass is a different resolution to these multicolour characters here, which are light grey and mid-grey, by the looks of it, maybe dark grey. Anyway, so the high resolution green grass has 8x8 pixels resolution, because it's high-res character, or a high-res character. And then the multicolour characters, of course, have a resolution of 4 horizontal pixels by 8 vertical pixels, and the horizontal pixels are doubled up because it's multicolour character mode. So anyway, in multicolour character mode, if you choose to use the first 8 colours of the colour palette, then the graphics come through as, or the character cells come through as high resolution. And if you then choose to use for the character cell colour the second lot of 8 colours, then the characters get drawn with multicolour character mode. So this is, as I say, a really good example of mixed high-res and multicolour mode. And if you zoom in on this debugger fully, then you can see the address of each character cell. I think it shows the character number as well. So this is character number 42 in hex. And I think it might be showing also the color data as well. So the last byte there, I think, is color A, which is 10 in decimal, and that's 8, 9, 10, so that's 0, 1, and 2, and 0, 2. The color number 2 is red, so yeah, I think that accounts for the beer bottle. So if I zoom in, or well, we're zoomed into the screen, but I've just died. Let's see if I can start the game again. There we go, there's the animating character set there for the beer bottle. So all of the other frames for the beer bottles are actually in the character set itself. It just seems to be dynamically updating the characters for the animating beer bottles. Okay, restarting C64 debuggery because it crashed. Let's load the beer rescue note from the disk as well. I just noticed that there was this note file on there. Haha, get it? Notice note file? Okay, never mind. Sorry, dad joke. Anyway, let's wait for that to load. Nice little decompressing border effect as well. Yay! Well, this is definitely old retro styly kind of like note thing, right? So we have sprite. We have some nice music, music by Skyrunner. coding by Epix. Okay, great, fantastic. But we have some nice sprites over the top. But using the targeting cursor, if I move the targeting cursor up into the border area, you can see the background color change, or the border color, sorry, changes. And it changes with a different color graduation effect there. So that's, you know, I really like these kind of like old style retro note screens, especially with raster times, you know, raster times border color changes or screen color changes for the raster bars there. I think the raster bars kind of like add a nice little header and footer to the whole page. It really does just look very, very nice. And the sprite animation effects as well in the foreground was actually quite nice too. So for completeness sake, let's have a look at the tape version now in Vice ICU 64. And we can see here that the tape loader, yeah, it's loaded data into what looks like the tape buffer into that first area part of the memory. It's automatically started, so it's an auto-running tape loader. It is using, apparently, my tape loader, along with Richard Bayliss's extra tweaks to make a tape loading system. So if it is using my tape loader, it should recover from loading errors. We can check that in a minute. So we have the loading screen being loaded in there in the background. So if I don't know, if I detach the tape image, and then if I attach the tape image again, this should introduce a loading error. And let's start the tape, and there we go. It's quite quickly detected that there's a loading error halfway through loading the loading screen, and the tape drive has been told to stop. So now if I stop the tape, and then if I just start it again, it was at the beginning of the tape that it, you know, detected the loading error. So if I then continue on, it should, in theory, recover from the loading error, and there we go, continue loading the loading screen. So if I rewind a little bit and then start the tape again, there we go, it's loaded corrupt data, and that's because I rewound the tape a bit and then started the tape again. So it read in a bunch of wrong data, it detected the wrong data, and it stopped the tape. And then let's rewind a little bit more, and then choose start, and then it should replace the corrupted data with correct data after it finds out it gets to the right point in the tape. And there we go. So that's, you know, that's a good part of the tape loading system, is that it does actually detect loading errors. Actually, in a new version of the source code, which is on my GitHub repository, which I normally link in the video description below, there's actually a new version which displays a nice little text message saying that it's detected a loading error and to please rewind the tape a little bit and then press play again. And it handles the whole process. Even when the loading screen is being displayed, it turns off the loading screen and then shows the text and gives you text prompts and stuff. So that's, you know, that's what you can get if you download the newest version of the source. Anyway, I digress. So if we look through the memory with text screens, let's just check the sprite banks actually, first of all. Okay, so we've got quite a lot of free memory. There seems to be quite a lot of other memory as well used for code and maybe graphics data, probably level data. But there we go. There's all of the sprite frames used in the game. Let's just see if they are dynamic. They're not. So we have the animated sprite frames for the snail and a flying bee facing left and right. We seem to have a beer crate as well. And we seem to have high resolution graphics for the player character. Of course, they're high resolution graphics. Let's have a look. So if we jump around and try and complete the level, yeah, there doesn't seem to be any other dynamic sprites going on. But yeah, we can see there quite clearly that the game is using data from that first bank in memory. Let's scroll around using the graphics debug map here. Of course, I will add a link to the tools that I use, the C64 debug GUI and the Vice I used to use C64 debugger as well. I usually add a link to my video description below, describing what the tools are and how I use them in more detail, and there's usually a video linked as well for that. I'll try to remember to add that. But we seem to have a whole bunch of screen data for the intro, for the level complete, and yeah, I think that. Oh no, that's part of the level complete screen. Okay, so if I edit it in memory using the edit function, it's not drawing it continuously to the screen. So these seem to be the level maps, right? So we seem to have level map data. So let's edit the second level by adding a whole bunch of ends to the level. And yeah, there seems to be a whole bunch of other levels as well in memory. And then there seems to be the loading data at the end. I think that's the loader routine up at F000 with the scrolling message and stuff like that. So yeah, let's continue. There we go. Well, okay, so we found by trial and error and using the graphics map editor debug view, by adding extra ends there, we can see that that's the level data. Let's try disabling the sprite to sprite collision in the Vice debug menu there for the VIC control. VIC being the video chip, of course. And there we go. So, okay, well that was easy. That makes the game a whole lot easier now, is that now we don't have sprite to sprite collision anymore. The beer bottles are characters, of course, so it doesn't care. But I don't die now to the bumblebee. Okay. So, interleaved with obviously what are the characters or the screen data for each level. There seems to be other data as well. If I edit it in memory using the same edit functionality of the graphics map view there, right? If I edit this other data which is interleaved, it looks like it probably might be color data, judging by the range, because all of the characters are between 0 to 15 in decimal, right? So if I edit those, so if I look for a good place to edit, I'm just trying to judge here, because so the screen data is not perfectly aligned with what the graphics debug map view thinks is normal alignment for screen and color around data alignment in memory. And it doesn't have to be, because this is not drawn by the VIC. It's copied into the other VIC bank and then drawn, you see. So yeah, I'm just looking for a good place to edit. Hopefully I'm going to get one of the pieces of data which corresponds to either this level or the next level. So I think that I think that those character formations correspond to the color data, but for the things on the right hand side, right? So if I edit those, if I edit these here, it could be color data, and it could also be collision data, all merged into one perhaps, or it could just be collision data, of course. So let's edit them anyway, by filling it in with what hopefully is background color. Okay, so it's not collision related, it's definitely not collision related, or it's not reading that memory anyway, or it's not reading the memory during the game, let's put it like that. So let's see if we can do a watch load for 8C00 to 8D00, which is basically the first 256 or 100 hex bytes of that memory of that last screen being displayed in the graphics debug map. It's not read, or it's not loaded from during the gameplay, and well, okay, that was game over. Oops. Let's go back again. Let's try and edit that. What might be color memory? Pretty sure it's color memory, but it might also be collision related as well. Sometimes, you can double up and use the same color memory for collision. Sometimes, depending on what you want to do. Other times you just use the characters which are visible on the screen, of course, which is a perfectly other valid way of doing it. But yeah, let's try and edit the memory, what might be color RAM, or color memory rather. It's not in the color RAM because it's not at the right memory location. But yeah, we'll look to see if that memory is being read from during the game. No, it's not. Okay, so if I move around, no, okay, so I should be triggering the breakpoint if it was reading from 8400 to 8500, but it's not. So that tells me that the game is not using that during the gameplay. So let's turn on sprite to sprite collision. Let's die again. Don't forget we've got the breakpoint active on watch load point anyway. And there we go. Ah, okay, yeah, definitely that confirms it. It's loading from that memory address, and of course it's storing it into D800. D800 is of course color RAM memory, which is where the color data for the currently visible screen is stored. So okay, yeah, it's definitely color RAM. So let's turn off again the sprite to sprite collision to make the game a whole lot easier. Thanks very much. Let's blast through this level. I want to get back to that actually. There we go. So this is displaying the current VIC visible. Ah, there we go. Oh, so I erased the platform characters for the currently visible screen, and then the player fell through the platform that was no longer visible. So there we go. Let's do that. Let's edit the screen again, but this time let's add some top of the platform blocks. Doesn't care what the color is, it just cares about what characters or what the characters are. So even though the colors are not correct, and that's because I'm not altering the color data, I'm just painting characters into the visible visible display bit screen, right? If I paint the correct characters for the platform into there, then the player can basically jump up. So yeah, it's using the visible characters in the currently displayed screen for collision for the player, at least. And there we go. There's also the colors that I've painted into the level data there. The colors have updated for that column of platforms on the right hand side there. So yeah, it's definitely color. It's definitely character data and color data laid out in memory like that sequentially. There seem to be about 10 levels or so, I think, in this game. Let's collect the beer bottles. A really nice little, cool little game. I don't know how long it took for it to be written, or graphics, or all the music done and everything like that. But yeah, it's a nice little self-contained game, right? So if we wanted to, we could probably use the memory scan functionality to find out where the level number is stored. So let's do a new scan and look for equal to 4. And we look for equal to 4 because we're currently on level 4. So now I'm going to try and complete this level. It should be quite easy, although I need to be careful. I need to be careful of the water down below, especially when jumping over these platforms. There we go. Okay, I'm not going to die now, right? Unless I'm really, really, really stupid. No, okay, I'm not really, really stupid. At least not playing this level. So now I'm going to wait until I know that the level number is now 5. Okay. Oh, and there we go. So I pressed the ink button and it looked for the next memory location that incremented from that list, and it narrowed it down to one memory location, which is 4085. So if I zoom in now in the memory debug view and I press the plus button or the minus button, oh look, well when I change the level number to A in hex, it displays level 10 on the screen, and I can change it to level, I don't know, 20, 21, 22, 17, 18, 19, whatever it is in hex. And it draws the decimal level number. So this game code seems to be able to handle the potential for more than 10 levels. But then if I die at level 23, it resets me back to level 1, probably because there's no more than 10 levels in the game. So let's set this to level 16, which is in hex, which is decimal in 22. Right, let's try and complete the level now rather than dying, and let's see what happens when the game detects that we've completed the level. And then we're on level 22 now, apparently. Ah, there we go. Mission accomplished. The beer is saved. You just hit 8,580 points. There we go. You have recovered all of the lost beer. Thanks to you, the next grill and chill party is back on. Hey, grill and chill sounds great if there's beer. Right, I love beer. Of course. Who doesn't? Well, people who don't like beer don't like beer. But anyway, generally speaking, beer is great. And there we go, back to the title screen. With a new high score. So really, really cool. I do like that game. So last but not least, let's use my tweaked C1541 tool to extract any hidden data that's on the disk. And as I'm looking through this, so hidden data, I mean basically chains of disk sectors which do not appear in the directory. So this can be old corrupted data. Sometimes it can, like here, contain data which I don't think that we've seen. So this is previous data that may have been saved over or written over, or data that was deleted as the disk was being created. So I don't know if we see this text anywhere in the notes or note file as it's being rendered, but this seems to load at well, the first 2 bytes are a hex address, low and high byte, but so it seems to want to load at 1020. Because it's not an aligned memory address, or it's not, 801 in hex, which is the start of basic memory, I don't think that this contains a complete chain of file data. It probably contains a partial chain. But what we can do is that we can try and load this data into ICU 64 and then look at it in the graphics map view and also the text screen view and see if we can ascertain what it looks like. There does seem to be some machine code in there looking at the hex bytes. A900, 8D0490 and all that kind of stuff, right? That's load accumulator immediate and store accumulator absolute. Right, so there does seem to be some machine code, some code in there, definitely some data. Let's look in the text screen view. Seems to be mostly code in those memory pages, and then there's the data at the end. Maybe it's a whole bunch or partial bunch of code, yeah, followed by some scrolly text message intro or something like that, perhaps. Okay, but this is the thing, right, is that it could be partially deleted data on the disk. So this disk data recovery, if it's been overwritten with something else, it's not going to get it. This seems to be, so this seems to be loaded at the wrong address because it's referencing memory all the way up at 9205, right? But memory all the way up at 9205 hasn't been stored into, there isn't anything at 9205, right? Because the file was not that large. Scrolling around, yes, there seems to be some code here, but it seems to be a fragment of code. There doesn't seem to be, there's a jam instruction at the beginning, right? And then there's a clear carry, add carry. So it seems to be like a partial data block here. I don't think that we're going to be able to get that running. Okay, the pushes, the PHA, TXA, PHA, TYA, PHA is kind of like, an ASL D019. That's kind of like the start of an interrupt routine, right? But this code seems to be misaligned, and I think that's because the start address for that sector chain is not complete. Okay. Let's look at the rest of the recovered files. 0801 in hex is definitely the start of basic memory, and there seems to be a sys2061 command at the beginning of that file, so it's T20S11, that's track 20 sector 11, that's where that sector change starts. Ooh, look, it runs. Oh, this is a version of the notes using a different piece of music by, what is it, Gerard Hell. And look, the credit for the music is different, right? So, so this is maybe an earlier version of the notes file, and the release version of the game has the notes file, which obviously uses the music by, you know, the correct intended author rather than probably just a placeholder piece of music. Okay. So this is like a development version of the notes file. That's cool to find. But it's also a good lesson in, you know, really, generally speaking, you should try and, I try and generally use a nice tool-based methodology for creating disk images and stuff like that from scratch every single time, so that I'm not saving data to a disk image which might contain previous data, so that previous development versions of stuff cannot be recovered. Right, so that's a good lesson, right? Don't reuse your disk images for test versions that we can see there in the disk directory block. Okay, yeah. So it looks like this disk image was created by hand, perhaps, rather than a nice tool chain which, you know, creates the disk image by creating an entirely new disk image and formatting it and then filling it with files, which is a lot safer. You know, you don't end up with extra data hanging around inside the sectors. But then again, you know, it wouldn't have been so interesting to find nothing. So anyway, I got this game from this release page here. There's the credits. There's the credit there. Thank you very much again for crediting Richard and me. It's always nice to be credited for tape loaders and disk loaders and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a really nice game. It's got a really nice itch page. If you want to get the game, then go to the itch page. I can heartily recommend it. And also, this itch page has the ability to, you can actually play the game as well by using it in a web page emulator. So that's fantastic as well, isn't it? Really nice feature to have. So yes, if you like these kind of technical deep dive videos, then please do consider liking or subscribing to this channel, or sending me a super thanks. They are always very much appreciated. I have an itch project page where you can download my software and optionally send me a nice donation, which is always appreciated. Take care, have a great day, evening or night, wherever you are.